Peace and welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a fantastic show for you. A lot of dynamic guests will be joining us. First and foremost, let's check in. We're going to be checking in with Dr. Gerald Horn to give us this week's Horn Report as he brings us up to speed on everything from the Trump follies and situations with the former president to everything that we're seeing in politics and around the country. So we'll hear from him. Also, let's check in and see where we are with the latest update. I'm going to be talking to a civil rights attorney to get her take on some of the big stories relating to Jackson, Mississippi, and other big cases. So we'll talk to her. Also, and then later on, we're going to check in with Dr. Melina Abdullah of Black Lives Matter as they respond to what Kanye West saying that Black Lives Matter is a scam. We'll have that conversation. And then later, we'll also be checking in with Coach Butch McAdams to talk about the historic home run of Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees as he hit 62 homers this season so far, outbeating Roger Maris for the record. So we'll talk about all of that. And of course, we want you to be a part of the conversation. So join us as we have our online culture crew and stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, good afternoon and welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. So happy that you're able to join us. Big shout out to my online culture crew that's checking in on YouTube, Facebook, and all of our streaming platforms. And make sure y'all do the same. Also, if you haven't had a chance, make sure at some point today you make your way over to blackstarnetwork.com because we want you to continue to show your support. We're growing, we're moving, we're evolving, and we're taking the conversation to the next level. So make sure you download blackstarnetwork.com on your apps on all of your devices, and also subscribe to all of our pages and all of us, all of the Black Star Network social media. We truly, truly appreciate it. All right, folks, let's jump right into it. It's Wednesday. It's now time for us to check in with Dr. Gerald Horn of the University of Houston to give us this week's Horn Report. All right, peace and good afternoon, Dr. Horn. How are you, sir?
It's all good. What about you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much. Good to hear from you again. And once again, I know that last time we talked, you were a little bit thrown off with your schedule because of what was the January 6th committee. But then we later found out it was because of Hurricane Ian that shifted the whole conversation. But I don't think there has been an announcement of any new hearing at this point, though. But we definitely have seen that there was a lot happening down in Florida. I don't know, Doc, if you got family down there like I do, but that hurricane was absolutely it was just devastating, to say the least, for Central Florida. So it's just mind blowing looking at just some of the photos from yesterday, even more so. Over 100 people have died, and as a result of this, and it's going to be interesting to see how the state of Florida recovers from this. I know that's not one of the big things, but it just came to my mind, just like, it's funny politically because Ron DeSantis, the governor down there, who has been against everything about climate control, he has stopped major climate change bills from happening in the state. And now this happens. And now it's like he got to eat his words and ask President Biden for some help at this point.
Well, I don't expect him to eat his words because hypocrites ordinarily do not eat their words. And sadly, it's not just Governor DeSantis, it's his comrades in the Republican Party, speaking of Senator Marco Rubio, who's facing a stiff challenge from Val Demings, a congressperson member of the Congressional Black Caucus, in this re-election race that'll be settled within a few weeks. And not to mention former Governor, now Senator Rick Scott, who has Social Security in the crosshairs. And as you suggested, like his other comrades, they voted consistently and persistently against anything that would arrest climate change And now, of course, they'll be coming to Washington, begging bowls in hand, begging for federal aid after trying to cut the federal budget, after seeking to deny federal aid to victims of Hurricane Sandy a few years ago in the New York, New Jersey area. So once again, don't expect any kind of eating of words from hypocrites.
Wow. I really wasn't. I wasn't. We did get word from my producer, Joel, who said that the next January 6th committee has been announced for the hearing will be reportedly happen on October the 13th, which is 1 week from tomorrow. So
okay, let me make a note.
Yes. So because this is going to be a very, very interesting hearing session. But that will happen, folks. And of course, we will certainly keep you posted on all of the details as that date gets closer around what's happening with the January 6th. But speaking of the GOP, let's start talking about Herschel Walker. Look, Brother Roland has done extensive conversations around this guy and him as a person and him as a candidate. But some of the talk right now, based upon the reports I've come across, Dr. Horn, is that pretty much that the GOP is still standing behind Herschel Walker running for the Senate down in Georgia. And despite all of this latest situation of him paying for an abortion for his former girlfriend back in 2009, she says she got the receipts. She says she got the reimbursement check, and he denies the whole thing. So that's one issue. The second part of that, of course, is his stance on abortion. So that creates another problem. And then I was going to say the icing on the cake is his son, Christian Walker, who has come out using, as young people do. Now, his son is a MAGA Republican. He's all the way in. I went on last night, Dr. Horn, went through his Twitter a little bit, his Twitter feed, and this young guy is he's all in for MAGA. He said he moved from California to Florida so he can be closer to Ron DeSantis, who he deems as being his hero. Keenan, let's just play a little bit of what Christian Walker had to say about his dad and his whole fatherhood experience with his dad. Take a look, y'all.
Silent lie after lie after lie. The abortion card drops yesterday. It's literally his handwriting in the card. They say they have receipts, whatever. He gets on Twitter. He lies about it. Okay, I'm done. Done. Everything has been a lie. Don't lie on my mom. Don't lie on me. Don't lie on the lives you've destroyed and act like you're some moral family man. Y'all should care about that, conservatives.
He seems a little angry, Doc.
Apparently so. But this is a very serious matter because Mr. Walker, who of course was a star football player with the Georgia Bulldogs, the University College team, was a good close comrade of Donald Trump when Donald Trump owned the New Jersey Generals. Herschel Walker played for the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys. And I have to say that as a running back, he was supreme. Right. As a political candidate, not so much. With regard to abortion, of course, he denies inducing or encouraging this woman who's accused him of having an abortion. As you suggested, he's not only against abortions, but abortions in cases of incest, rape, and danger to the mother's life. So he's a hardliner. But I think it's also important to look at those who are supporting him. We should not be surprised that the so-called pro-life movement, the anti-choice movement, the anti-abortion movement is standing by their man. Recall that a few years ago, the Access Hollywood tape, when candidate Donald J. Trump in 2016, weeks before the election with Hillary Rodham Clinton, was caught on tape bragging and boasting about grabbing women by their private parts. The Republicans stood by their man, and we should expect them to stand by their man once again. And I think we need to understand why. We need to understand that over the decades, we, that is to say the Black community and our allies, have done a bang-up job in seeking to discredit, at least formally and officially, fundamental ideas about Black inferiority, which these conservatives used to expound regularly. And so now they want to discourage the idea that they're racist by standing by a Black candidate. And we should not allow them to get away with this nonsense, particularly since we know that his competitor, Mr. Walker's opponent, is incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock, an ordained minister, in addition to being a senator, pro-choice, running in conjunction and in league with Stacey Abrams, who we trust will be the next governor of Georgia. So it's going to be a close race because, as we've already suggested, these Republicans, they're little more than hypocrites. And it should not shock or surprise us that they're standing by Herschel Walker, even though he's supposed to be against abortion. And yet there is evidence to suggest that he has encouraged abortions.
But okay, even if it's the abortion thing, Doc, okay. All right, he got caught in a lie, and he's adamant about, you know, that he didn't do this, and he denies all of this. But it's just the fact of just his thinking. You know, I've watched him on various platforms, interviews, and all of that, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy, like, how is this guy able to get this far? Like, you know, you brought it up to my attention offline. Keenan, let's just play the Saturday Night Live skit of Kenan Thompson. And then this is sad. This is really, really sad because it's like life imitates art. If we had played this skit, this is Saturday Night Live of Kenan Thompson playing Herschel Walker during the segment with Michael Che. Check this out.
Last month, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell expressed concern about Republicans' chances in the midterms, blaming candidate quality. Here to explain what he meant is Mitch McConnell and Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker.
Pleasure. Yeah, let's go team, all right?
So, Herschel, you're a former NFL player.
Yes.
With no political experience.
That's right.
And you were caught lying about having 3 secret children.
Yes, sir.
So, Senator McConnell, do you really think this guy is ready to be a senator?
It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what I say, and I say, go Herschel Walker.
Hey, well, I love you too, Mitch McConnell. You see, we not so different. Me and Mitch are like 2 peas in a bag.
All right, well, Herschel, you've already said some pretty bizarre things that they've got some Republicans worried. I mean, for example, you said, quote, our good air decided to float over to China's bad air, so when China gets our good air, the bad air got to move out. What does that mean?
Oh, Che, I'll slow down so you can understand. We all know Air, right? Air Bud.
Yeah.
Air Jordan.
Sure.
Aaron Brockovich.
Indeed.
You see, science don't understand. Everybody talking about climate, but what we really should be focusing on is pulling Hawaii closer.
Ooh, oh, yeah.
Bring that climate over here.
That's a good idea. I like that.
They don't need it. They little. So that's something we need to look at very, very closely. Right, Bish?
Right, it's Mitch.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Senator McConnell, I gotta ask, what qualifications does this guy actually have to be in the Senate?
Well, there's too many to name. First of all, he played football, and Georgia loves football.
Everybody loves football, baseball. In fact, man, catching balls is what makes us different from apes, okay?
That's right.
And listen, if we come from apes, why are there still apes out there? Riddle me that, Obama Michelle.
What are you talking about? Do you have any real policy proposals?
Of course I do. You know what? I wrote a few down for Mitch on the way over here. Here, go ahead. Read that there, Mitch.
Sure. Proposal number 1, Barbecue Tuesday.
There it is.
Number 2, let's get a daytime moon. That way, no more rain.
Boom.
And number 3, create a department of Instagram booty. Too many girls out here faking their cake.
It ain't right. It ain't right.
You know what? You know what, Herschel? Why don't you just tell them about yourself?
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you, Stitch. I don't mind if I do. Where's my camera? Is it down here?
No, it's right there, man. It's there.
Oh, okay. Hi, America. My name is Herschel Walker, and I play football for the U.S. Senate. Whenever I'm in hard times, I think of the strength of our founding fathers, George Carver Washington, the Jeffersons, and Benjamin Frankenstein. They changed the world when they got together and wrote the Bible. And when I'm the government, we gonna see. Thank you.
Okay, Mitch McConnell and Herschel Walker, everybody.
The sad thing is the joke is on us if he gets elected.
If Herschel Walker, as a political candidate, was a character on Saturday Night Live, I would be like, oh, okay, this is really funny. But Herschel Walker, as a candidate, is a real person.
Yeah, it's a sign of how politics in this country has deteriorated. More than that, how the Republican Party is so desperate to have these puppets in office that they will descend to putting forth this utterly incompetent former football player to be a serious so-called candidate for the United States Senate. It's an outrage. It's an insult.
And so here's the thing, though, Dr. Horn, as we look at this, here's the thing. How do we, and I mean, we tell people, and look, folks, if you're in Georgia, you got to come out and vote. I mean, you just got to come out and vote. But to that point of how we have allowed politics to diminish to the point where we're electing or we're propping up certain individuals to be in front of the American people to take on the very, very serious role of leadership in government. I mean, and you know, Saturday Night Live, of course, is a satirical platform, but it just creates this gaping hole in our culture where we're like, you know what? This is funny. Public service, or people who are working to be in public service, is a funny pursuit. And it's kind of, and my concern is that it's going to be hard for people to try to differentiate what's real and what's not real. You know what I mean? If you don't know anything about Herschel Walker, you looking at this and you probably like, oh my gosh, this is funny. Okay, but you may not like, you know, it just seems like fact and fiction that starts to blend together. And people, I don't know if a lot of folks are really catching on to the fact of the differentiation between the two.
Well, the sad news and the bad news, I'm afraid to say, is that before the collapse of the Roman Empire, politics had deteriorated to the point where they were electing horses to high office. So the fact that the Herschel Walker is being put forth is not a very good sign for the advance of this country, not to mention this society. The good news is that even in his own hometown of Wrightsville, Georgia, according to a recent New York Times report, he has next to zero support from the Black community. In other words, if he is elected, it will not be because of the Black vote. It will be because of the so-called white vote, which is trying to put him forth in order to get a vaccination against the notion that they might be racist, which we know is a fact. Wow.
Absolutely mind-blowing. All right, let me just take a couple of comments about this before we move on to the next topic here, Doc. Deidre Hall checking in. Good to hear from you, Deidre. You said that was crazy. Plus, he lied about not paying the woman for abortion. Right. Exactly. Thank you for checking in, Deidre. Shalinda, you said, I really feel bad for his son and the mother, but he also get what he deserves. Right. Which is public scrutiny, embarrassment, humiliation. He knows better. Well, maybe he doesn't, Doc. Maybe he doesn't. Chris V, thank you so much, Shalinda. Chris V, you said next Herschel will be saying China declared war on the U.S. by having their bad air travel to the Atlantic Ocean to start up Hurricane Ian.
I tell you, the joke is on us.
I'm telling you. And that's the sad part about it. I remember when President Trump was running, and people were laughing, and I was just like, y'all know that if this man actually wins, this is real life. This is not like, and I didn't feel like Dr. Horn, it took America probably a good year, maybe a good year and a half to fully accept that President Trump was in the White House, even after he got elected. You know what I mean? It was like this 1 year time frame. People were like, is he really the president? Like, who won the, folks were still asking, like, did Trump really win the election? It's like, yeah, it's January 2017. You know what I mean? It's like the situation moved on. So I just, and I think the sad part about it is if we're making fun of a fundamental institution, of a fundamental system that keeps order, that keeps us moving forward, everything, it seems like all bets are off. And once you get into that place, to your point, Dr. Horn, once you get to that place, it's just like we're going to be down. It's a downward slope. It's a downward slope. If we can't take our own representatives seriously, we can't take our own system seriously, then how can we expect the rest of the world to look at us and take us seriously?
Not only that, but when you get these nincompoops like Herschel Walker in the U.S. Senate, it increases the danger of war, because he will basically do whatever the warmongers suggest that he does. And we can no longer laugh that off, because if we have time, I'm sure we'll find the opportunity to talk about the fact that we may be on the verge of World War III as we speak.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, because that's the other part about it. You got people in there, and I saw a report, Dr. Horn, and I can't remember right now whether it's the New York Times or Washington Post, but or USA Today, but basically it was saying that more MAGA Republicans have ran for office and have won the office. You and I talked about this. Now we're in a situation where relationships with Russia and other places may be getting so intense that some of the big decisions about our very lives are going to be in the hands of individuals like this. I'm not talking about Herschel Walker, just in terms of individuals who are just looking for a power grab, and instead of looking at how do we save this country? How do we make sure that all of the people in this country are safe and sound? And so when we're looking at the situation right now in Russia, and here's the latest, folks, Russia is, I would say, taking on, they're like trying to throw paint at the wall, trying to figure out how to get out of this situation they find themselves in with Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting back. Ukraine is taking territories. And as a result of that, the annexation of regions in Ukraine is moving forward. We're talking about creating a reserve list. Russia is talking about trying to get 300,000 folks to be a part of this reserve army. They're still talking about doing some things with the resources of oil and other natural resources there. And now they put up, of course, we talked about this a little bit, but they're still doubling down on using nuclear bombs. Here's what they said. Take a look, folks. Check out this. This is some of the latest, where Putin has previously threatened to resort to nuclear weapons if Russia's goals in Ukraine continue to be thwarted. The annexation brings the use of a nuclear weapon a step closer by giving Putin a potential justification on the grounds that, quote, the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, as he put it in his speech last week. He renewed the threat on Friday with an ominous comment that the U.S. atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki created a, quote, precedent for the use of nuclear weapons, echoing references he has made in the past to the U.S. invasion of Iraq as setting a precedent for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What do we make of that? I mean, he's claiming he's an independent leader. He's claiming that he's critical. He claims that he has a plan, but he's making all these references to moves that the United States have made, things that have happened to the United States. And it just seems like he has no plan. He seems like he's going off the playbook of the U.S. And more importantly, he seems like, you know what, he just wants to keep doubling down on this nuclear threat. What do we make of this, Doc?
Well, I think it's quite ominous. It's quite dangerous. You may be familiar with the saying from the recent past, where a sage suggested that he was not sure who would win World War III, but he was sure that World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones, because World War III would mean the devastation, the destruction of society and civilization as we know it. But in the short term, the news is also rather ominous and dangerous. You might have seen the news this afternoon that the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, which includes Saudi Arabia and which cooperates with Russia, has just decided to cut production sharply.
About 2 million barrels, right?
Sorry?
2 million barrels. I'm sorry, 2 million barrels. If that is that the right number that I saw that OPEC?
It may be more than that. And what that means, if you drive down the supply, you're going to drive up the price. And I know that in California, it's approaching $7 per gallon.
Oh, it's there, Doc.
Sorry?
It's already there.
Yeah. So with this latest OPEC cut, you can be expecting to pay more. And you know that the United States has this so-called strategic petroleum reserve. That is to say, oil that they keep in caverns and caves. Months ago, Mr. Biden began to release that supply. And now that's basically tapped out. And so there will be no recourse if OPEC decides to cut supply. And then here's the icing on the cake from Moscow's point of view. Meteorologists have suggested that November winter will be approaching. That is to say, before December 21st. And we already know about the sabotage of the gas pipeline from Russia into Western Europe. We already know that you see people in the forests in Austria collecting wood to burn in wood-burning stoves. I don't know if I shared with you what might be apocryphal. That is to say, the big winner from this crisis in Europe might be the estate of late Philadelphia crooner Teddy Pendergrass and his song, "Turn Off the Lights, Light a Candle," because that's basically what's approaching in Western Europe.
Absolutely. I can definitely see that. And as you spoke my language when you talking about the barrels of gas, Doc, because you're right. I'm wondering how high can it really get? I don't know what the strategy is from America and the rest of the countries, but I mean, do you foresee gas getting to the $8, $9 gallon price? And if so, what will that do?
Well, yes, it basically means a wage cut for those who have jobs. You know that the Federal Reserve is already raising interest rates because they're trying to induce a recession because they feel that's the only way to curb inflation. That is to say, the rise in prices that you're already alluding to. And so you can expect higher unemployment. You can expect more homelessness. In fact, I saw an article the other day about folks devastated by Hurricane Ian, and they've raised the blue and yellow Ukraine flag at their homestead because they figured that might cause Congress to send them some aid. That's the kind of crisis that we're now facing.
Wow. Doc, we got a couple of moments left, and I always enjoy our conversation. But I wanted to get your take on what's happening as we talk about what's going on with Russia. Let's bring it back home again to what's happening here in America, as we saw Oath Keepers are on trial this week. Over the past few days, they have been scrutinized for their involvement with January the 6th and their plans to overthrow the government. Here's what is said out of the New York Times, folks, that Antifa election fraud in 1776, these were messages provide window into the Oath Keepers. And Stuart Rhodes, who is the leader of the Oath Keepers, is under great scrutiny. Here's what he said. This is what's been reported very quickly. The day after the election, for instance, Mr. Rhodes called for the creation of an armed quick reaction force of military and law enforcement veterans to be on hand for pro-Trump demonstrations in Washington and other cities. In a message to his subordinates, he suggested the importance of the force by quoting George Washington speaking to his troops in 1776, saying the fate of unborn millions will now depend under God on the courage and conduct of this army. 3 days later, when several media organizations called the race for Joseph R. Biden Jr., Mr. Rhodes wrote a message to one of his associates declaring, quote, Trump must not concede, encouraging the Oath Keepers to stand up against both GOP Congress critters and communists in the street. Mr. Rhodes proposed a plan. He wanted his members to march en masse on the nation's capital. And now he's up for trial. So do you foresee that this trial will start to stem the tide of any kind of anti-government or any type of MAGA incited movement over the next couple of months, because now you have one of the biggest militias out there, Oath Keepers, that is being scrutinized. Is this going to be the beginning of the end of these militias? Do you foresee that happening, Doc?
I don't see the beginning of the end coming that easily, although I would add the important footnote that they are being tried in Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C., even with gentrification, is still a kind of chocolate city. That suggests that there will be a significant number of Black people on the jury, and I expect that they will not be sympathetic to the Oath Keepers, nor sympathetic to their comrades, which includes the Proud Boys, the Three Percenters, and these other militias who are notoriously racist and notoriously violent. Recall that just a few weeks ago, some of these militiamen were convicted of seeking to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and perhaps execute her. The New York Times had a story a few days ago about violent threats against members of Congress. These Oath Keepers have made threats against Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So we are in a very dangerous, perilous moment, although I dare say that it doesn't look good for the Oath Keepers right now. I expect them to be convicted, and I will be shocked if they're not.
Me too. Me too. I expect them to be convicted, and I certainly will be shocked if they aren't as well. Dr. Gerald Horn, always a pleasure, and it's a great honor to have you on the show. Thank you for this week's report, and we look forward to reconnecting with you, God willing, next week. Thank you, Doc.
Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to be checking in with civil rights attorney and social justice advocate Nekima Levy Armstrong to bring us up to date on some of the big cases that we have been talking about on this platform and in other spaces, that she's doing the work of supporting our people across the country. Stay tuned for that conversation of where are we, some of the latest updates about civil rights and social justice in America. So stay with us. That discussion is coming up next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We have been talking about a number of issues that have been affecting Black America, from the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis to issues around police reform and social justice and civil rights. And it seems to be a plethora of things that we continue to discuss. And so today I wanted to kind of kick off a conversation, and I framed it as, where are we as we get updates about civil rights and social justice efforts? And the sister that we're bringing on today is a sister that's been on the front line for many years. She is a civil rights attorney, and she's also serving as the the executive director for the Wayfinder Foundation that is doing some work in the area of social justice. We want to welcome to the airwaves of The Culture here on the Black Star Network, Sister Nekima Levy Armstrong. Sister Nekima, thank you so much. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be on with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. First and foremost, talk to us a little bit about the work that you're doing with the Wayfinder Foundation, Sister Nekima, and then we could talk about some of the other issues.
Absolutely. So as you said earlier, I'm the executive director of the Wayfinder Foundation. We are a national organization that is focused on Black and brown women who are standing on the front lines for racial justice in their communities. And so the women who are a part of Wayfinder hail from across the country. They work on a variety of issues, but our primary areas of focus are on addressing issues within the public education system, as well as the criminal justice system, and making sure that the voices of Black and brown women are being amplified and that they have a seat at the table. You know, too often we don't get invited to the table, even when we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, we're advocating and we're making sacrifices. And so often our focus is on creating new tables to ensure that the folks who are doing the work are having their voices heard, that they're able to advance the cause of justice and fight for change. I'll give an example of one of our fellows out of Los Angeles is a woman named Helen Jones, who's on the forefront of addressing criminal justice issues there. And her involvement came to be because her son was killed while in custody, allegedly by the LA County Sheriff's Department and some of the deputies there. And they beat him so badly, and they tried to pass his death off as a suicide. But Helen learned to read autopsies, and she has refuted that, and she's been fighting for justice for her son. She's working with professors out of UCLA who just put forward a groundbreaking report questioning multiple deaths that have happened in the custody of the LA Sheriff's Department that have been swept under the rug. Excuse me. And a lot of these are Black and brown men who are being killed in custody. And so think about being a mother, you know, worried about your young son in his 20s, knowing that your son's detained and then finding out that he has essentially been murdered while in jail, and there is, again, no accountability. And so to have a woman like that we're able to work alongside of, elbow to elbow, you know, encouraging, providing technical support, financial support, pushing for her platform to be expanded. That's an example of the kind of work that we do as a foundation.
And that's such an important and necessary work. I'm in Los Angeles, so you know that's always a concern. I have a 9-year-old son, you know, so I constantly think about, you know, as he gets older in those spaces, you know, once he gets to the age where he wants to hang out with family and friends, you know, what the experience is going to be like. And I know that I'm going to do all that I can to prepare him for that period. But like you said, you don't know. You really don't know. And I think in a lot of these cases, right, that we've seen, especially when it comes to police-involved shootings, police deaths, where our people are dying in police custody, there's just so many, you know, uncertainties. There are so many, you know, factors and variables that are left unanswered. And we don't get the justice. We don't get the type of awareness to let our people know across the country about some of the injustices and some of the pains that we are suffering from. And so I'm happy that Wayfinder is doing its part to bring women into it. But let me ask you, because I know that Black women, y'all been doing it. Y'all been doing this for a very, very long time, Sister Nekima. So, you know, talk to us, like, how are Black men involved in supporting the work that you sisters are doing?
Well, we have one Black man on our staff, actually, who was formerly incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. A young Black man named Mayan Burrell, who went to prison here in Minnesota as a 16-year-old teenager for being falsely accused of murder. And actually, one of the folks who was responsible for him receiving a life sentence was Amy Klobuchar, who is a member of Congress representing Minnesota. And so in 2020, before George Floyd was killed, we actually advocated for Mayan. We held protests. We called this out in the media locally and nationally. And as a result of a groundswell of support and applying pressure to Amy Klobuchar while she was running to become president of the United States, and actually using this case on the campaign trail, all of the negative attention and publicity actually resulted in her dropping out of the race for president. And then we met with her along with Mayan's family, and we demanded that she use her political power and her leverage to advocate that the case be reopened and reinvestigated. And ultimately, by the end of December, mid-December, actually, 2020, Mayan Burrell walked out of prison as a free man, on a supervised release, but the governor and the attorney general actually allowed him to be released on supervised release. He would have spent who knows how much longer in prison. He had already spent about 18 years there. And so now he is one of our staff members as a Black man in the community, trying to raise awareness, trying to advocate for other people who are on the inside, and recruiting other Black men to aid in the work. We were just in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago as an organization, and we gathered Black and brown women from around the country, but we also had Black and brown men in attendance as well. Some of them film directors, such as a friend of mine who is working on a feature-length film about Latasha Harlins. And you probably have heard her name, being from LA. I grew up in LA. Latasha Harlins was one of my middle school classmates, but she wound up being killed at 15 years old by a Korean store owner, Soon Ja-doo, being, allegedly stealing a bottle of orange juice, right? And so this is someone who I went to school with, someone who was outspoken, who wanted to become a lawyer. And now we've connected with the family and with the director who is working on her feature-length film, and we've provided support for that as well. And so that's a Black man, telling the story of a Black girl who was unjustly murdered, and for where there hasn't been any real accountability. We also worked with the director out of Chicago. We had him showcase his film that he made documenting the struggle for education justice in Chicago, where the school board was trying to shut down one of the highest performing schools in the state of Illinois, just to make way for primarily affluent white parents who wanted to turn that middle school into a high school for their own purposes. So this Black man, documented that struggle, captured the voices of Black women on the front lines and others who were fighting, and he turned that into a feature-length film called Let the Little Light Shine. So Black men are much involved in the work that we do, standing alongside of us and advocating for justice.
That's awesome. And I'm so happy to hear that you're building these relationships, telling the stories, because, for a lot of our people, we got to see it. You know what I'm saying, Sister Nekima? Like, we have to see it. Like, as much as, and even on this show and on this platform and on this network of Black Star Network, we can talk about the issues, but it's something about seeing it in film. Like, we're waiting to see, and I'm hearing some rave reviews around Till, the new film about Emmett Till, his mother, and you know what I mean? So we have to get our people there. I'm sorry, go ahead, sis.
I'm sorry, I was just saying his cousin lives here, and she helps to lead the Emmett Till Family Foundation. And
okay, awesome.
Instrumental, around this film, around raising awareness in Washington and getting that anti-lynching bill passed. Because just as you're suggesting, a lot of us don't know our history. Yeah. We also haven't necessarily seen it being done before. And so these images are painful, but they also are powerful if we understand that they can move us towards our purpose and destiny and helping to transform these systems that are impacting our lives.
And Sister Nekima, when we look at these, when we hear these stories, right? And it's unfortunate because there are so many, and the names start to kind of run all in the same space. You know what I mean? Because because of social media, because there's I would say even a national awareness about some of the injustices that affect Black people in this country, it gets to a point, and I hope you can kind of speak to this, but it gets to a point, I think, for some of us where it's like, okay, another story, another shooting, another murder, another, another Black person is getting beaten, another Black person is found hung in some jail cell down in the South or in this place, and it's like we when we're processing it, it's not quite like when we were back in the 80s. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I'm from the East Coast, so you process things different. Now in 2022, there's so much stuff that's coming in our minds and into in front of our eyes, and we don't process things, and we don't even quote unquote grieve, have the moment to just grieve. How do we get to that place? How do we find that? Because you're working with these families. You're an attorney, you're a voice, you're an advocate. So how do we take the time to really say, you know what, what's going on with this situation? What's going on with this situation? And how do we make sure that we are processing all of this properly so that way we can determine what the next step should be?
Well, that's an outstanding question. And I think it's like the $20 million question that many of us grapple with, because so many of us, unfortunately, have become desensitized. When we hear these stories, we become numb to the pain and numb to the seriousness of what we're witnessing. And plus, we're in an age where everything is being documented, right? By ourselves through selfies or videos, or when we're out in the street. So everything is pretty much caught on camera at this point. I think the approach that has helped me is to, one, do my best to strike a balance, right? I can't be out there everywhere doing everything, but I can do some things. And so I try to figure out, well, what is my lane? What area can I most be impactful in, or help delegate, or help gather resources, to move things forward? And I think if more of us ask that question of, well, what can I do? What is my lane? What role can I play? That would actually help address a lot of the issues, and it would prevent burnout from those who are consistently on the front lines, making those sacrifices and putting our bodies on the line. So when I do get involved in something, I try to, one, choose, what can I get involved in and actually make an impact around? And, how do I give it the spirit of perseverance and tenacity and attention that it needs? Sure. So that might mean I have to focus, on 1 or 2 or 3 things versus 10 or 20 things. But when you have a village around you of folks who care, who have made a conscious decision to not tune out or be indifferent when these issues happen, and who are willing to do their part, then it makes a difference. I mean, that's part of how we were able to get justice for George Floyd after he was killed. There was a huge community effort and outpouring of support, people taking to the streets, shutting things down. I mean, we did it all. Advocating with the governor, to ultimately ensure that those 4 officers who killed George Floyd are now paying the price behind bars. But it definitely takes a village, and we can't tune out. If Ida B. Wells didn't tune out when people were being lynched, right? She could have just gone on about her business, lived her best life, but instead someone close to her was lynched, and she said, wait a minute, what can I do as a Black woman in the South seeing this happen? I'm not a lawmaker. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of power, but what she had was the power of her pen, a vision, and the power of her voice. And she used that to travel everywhere to document lynchings, to make sure people knew the names of the folks who had been unjustly lynched in this country. So that's the kind of energy we have to bring to this fight.
And Sister Nekima, I think that point that you just made is absolutely excellent, that we have to figure out where we can help based upon the lane that we are proficient in. And because I've come across a lot of people. I do social advocacy, social justice work, organizing the next generation in the different spaces. And I'm always telling young people, when they say, oh man, Farajii, how can I get involved? How can I get involved? I said, well, start with what you want to do. Because the last thing we need are more people. If I'm telling you where you need to go, but that's not your skill set, that's not where your passion is, that's not, is not going to move forward. That situation is not going to make any headway. So, it starts with what people do. And I think that we're getting to that. I'm very hopeful and optimistic, Sister Nekima, that we as Black people in this country, we are getting to the point of being 100% dead satisfied, which will bring about that 100% change that we have all been hoping and praying for.
Yes.
I know we're getting there. I know it, but it still takes, we kind of waking up from a 400 plus year slumber. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's going to take us more than just a couple of great speeches, or it's going to take more than just a couple of hashtags. It's going to take some, and even, when I look at the heroes and those who stand before us who have taught, you have Dr. Conrad Wells, you got the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you got people in the Pan-Africanist space, the nationalist space, and all of those places. I know that without a shadow of doubt, they have laid the groundwork, but our people, the forces against us, and I'm saying the forces of the rise against our people,
yes,
the enemy of our rise, they're turning up the heat just as much as our people are turning up the heat on consciousness and awareness. And so, we gotta be able to combat that. I want to get a couple of comments in here, and then I want to ask you about a couple of the cases that you are currently working on, Sister Nekima. Real Brooklyn checked in. My guy, you said Black folk have become desensitized from hard living because it is a part of our DNA, and we are always expected to deal with pain, whether from others or from our own. That's true.
It is true. I can understand why, we would become desensitized because it's so much pain. It's so many stories. And there is just an overflow of injustice, right, that has happened, that has caused folks to not trust that anything is ever going to be different or anything is ever going to change. But I would just urge us in the midst of that, not to overload ourselves with those videos, because there's certain videos I can't watch anymore. I have to really prepare myself because I know that I'm going to unleash more trauma upon myself.
That's it.
What someone else did to one of our people. And so I don't urge people to go out and watch everything. But again, if your focus is on justice, is figuring out what is my lane. There's no end to the number of injustices that are out there, beyond policing, right? Whether it's economic injustice, which we saw Dr. King fight for towards the end of his life when he was trying to bring the Poor People's Campaign to Washington, D.C., whether it's looking at education justice and trying to finish the work that Thurgood Marshall started, in trying to push for greater levels of equity and equality in our school systems, or whether it's looking at the system of mass incarceration and the war on drugs. I would love to see, for example, the Congressional Black Caucus get involved in leading the fight to repeal the laws that make up the war on drugs at the federal level. They were instrumental in why we have the war on drugs to begin with, and generations of trauma upon trauma upon trauma, families split apart that we have never recovered from, never received reparations for. So some of those same folks who are part of that legacy need to lead the charge to repeal the war on drugs. And it should happen under the Biden administration. Lord knows they got the Black vote to get him in and all these other folks in. So what is coming to our people as a result of us sacrificing our vote to be a part of a machine that left us behind a long time ago, if we were ever a part of it to begin with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love for the CBC. They just had their 51st annual legislative summit conference. I would love it. I would love it. One of the things, and we talked about it on the show just last week, I think they're making some strides, but, there's still some conversations that are left untouched. Yes. The conversation around reparations, the conversation around, what is the political alternative for Black and brown and other marginalized communities? I think the CBC should be leading the charge in those spaces, because I would say white and Black folks in this country, we all are dissatisfied with the current state of leadership, political leadership. So I would agree with you on that.
Yes, Farajii, that's the thing. For like white people can be dissatisfied, but the entire system is built for them to be successful.
Sure. Well, no doubt.
With our dissatisfaction, a lot of times it's life or death. So that's part of the stakes that, you know, we have to bear when they don't step up politically. They're asking for our vote, but they're not giving us anything in return. So our vote needs to count for something, or you're going to see that dissatisfaction turn into folks refusing to go to the polls because they feel that they're choosing between the lesser of two evils, but they can't tell which is which.
Right, right.
So it's in all of our best interest to address the deficits within the political system and to ensure that Black voices are being heard and that our votes are not being taken for granted. And again, the Congressional Black Caucus bears some of that responsibility because their Black faces and their Black voices were used as a tool of oppression for these harsh drug laws that have resulted in our families being broken up. Some would argue probably worse or equitable, you know, equally to some of the things that they experienced during slavery and Jim Crow. So that's the that needs to be on the table, and it needs to be on the table now. And you also mentioned reparations. I remember Congressman John Conyers, if I remember correctly, he brought forward House Bill 4040, right? Decades, bringing the same bill just to study reparations, not even for reparations itself, but to study it, and couldn't get that passed. And this man was ultimately booted out of Congress. He died. And I don't know who is picking up the torch in Washington.
Well, Barbara Jordan and some of the other Black lawmakers have definitely picked up the mantle. I have spoken to folks that have been advocating for a national conversation with about reparations, who are saying that we're more further along now because of that 35 years that John Conyers was advocating since his death now. And we're seeing smaller cities across this country, like Evanston, Illinois, and other spaces that are saying, okay, this could possibly be enacted in our own unique way based upon city structure. So I see that folks are feeling a little bit more hopeful. There was the big conversation about reparations here in California that Governor Gavin Newsom kind of held off, and I think there was an update about that. But we're further along, I think. Reparations is not a taboo subject in America anymore.
True.
And so it's a real blessing to see it.
Yeah, you're right, Farajii, but we need a fire, right?
Oh, no doubt. Sister King, we need like a forest fire.
That's right. That's right. To let them know, like,
we don't need no more Smokey the Bears. We need a forest fire up in this piece for this thing.
That's how serious it is. Because we look out, right? Our communities suffer. And then they blame us. We're like, we didn't create this.
No.
Y'all awarded this wealth. You haven't paid our people. And then you see predictable consequences of that. And then you want to blame us. But it's like, no, you all are responsible for a lot of the conditions we face in our community. And you won't lift a finger to get us over that threshold of just asking and ensuring that we get the resources that our ancestors worked for. Right. And who I work with, she says, listen, they shouldn't be worried about how Black folks use their money if they receive reparations. We haven't been worried about how anybody else has used their money. We haven't looked at the white folks who have benefited off of slavery directly and indirectly. We see them out at restaurants, shopping, buying the biggest houses and the nicest cars, and nobody asks how they're using their money. So we should not put that burden on our people. Our people should be able to use the money however they need to. And there needs to be more of a community reparations model, you know, that looks at schools, that looks at free college tuition, you know, and all kinds of things that would benefit us as a culture.
Absolutely. And I want to correct myself. As Representative Sheila Jackson Lee that's picked up the mantle, and big shout out to my online culture crew to keeping it. Yeah, they keep me on point, Sister Nekima. So I appreciate that. I appreciate for the Farajii. We want to give credit where credit is due, but there's a number of Black lawmakers that have joined on to Representatives Lee's effort to keep this situation alive. We got a few moments left, Sister Nekima, but I want to kind of get your take on two very important cases. One is that one of the things that you do with Wayfinder Foundation is you deal with the welfare system and making sure that there is some level of equity in welfare policies. You've been working on this whole scandal relating to former NFL quarterback Brett Favre. And I wanted to ask you, where are we with this scandal as it relates to him being involved and him getting money in a very, very secretive and a very, very unethical way. And because you guys have actually started a petition on change.org around this issue. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes. So some of the women who are connected to Wayfinder are from the Delta region of Mississippi. I'm actually originally from Jackson, Mississippi. And so in working with these powerful Black women on the front lines, many of them are elders. They've been at this for a very long time. They brought to our attention the Jackson water crisis. Now, our team had traveled to Jackson, Mississippi in May. We didn't know that there was a water crisis at that time. But 2 months later, what we saw happening was the local elected officials, they all sent out these boil water notices to residents of Jackson, I guess through the water system, saying that it was unsafe to drink or use the water without boiling it. So this means when people are trying to brush their teeth, take a shower, drink some tap water, it is unsafe. It's contaminated water. And recent studies are showing that there's lead in the water as well. Jackson is over 82% Black. The state of Mississippi has the highest population of Black folks anywhere in the country. And we know that folks are disproportionately poor in the state of Mississippi. A lot of the Black folks there are descendants of enslaved peoples, including myself and my family, which goes back many generations in Mississippi. And so the governor, Republican governor, has been very slow moving around getting aid to the residents of Jackson so that, the water system is addressed. It's right now the infrastructure is crumbling. They don't have qualified people to, address the problems within the plant. It's just a whole mess, but it's been in the works for many, many years. But the governor's statement at his press conference recently was saying, hey, water isn't free. And then he talked about the fact that people need to pay their water bills, just arrogance and white privilege at its finest. Now, as this is going on in Jackson, 150 to 180,000 people affected by that, men, women, and children. As that's going on, we simultaneously have this huge welfare scandal that includes a total of about $77 million through the 10F program, temporary assistance to needy families. So that money was supposed to be distributed to poor families across Mississippi. Instead, that money has been squandered in Mississippi's largest public corruption case. And Brett Favre is at the center of it. Many of us watched Brett Favre for many years play football, and he has made tens of millions of dollars during the course of his career. So why is it that he had to go to his contacts within Mississippi, including the former governor, Phil Bryant, to get them to commit millions of dollars to build a volleyball facility at his alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi, which is the same school where his daughter attended college and played on the volleyball team. So millions went towards building a new volleyball facility there. And as a part of this agreement, Brett Favre was told he would receive $1.1 million for speaking engagements that he never completed. So to date, he's paid back the $1.1 million. He still owes over $200,000 in interest. And beyond that, he also asked Mississippi to invest in a pharmaceutical company that is supposed to look at concussions and find a cure for concussions. But this was money meant for low-income families. So how did it end up in the hands of a Hall of Famer who has all the money, all the privilege, all the access to do something that was one of his personal pet projects or in the interest of his family, which is unconscionable and unacceptable. He has not been arrested. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask though, sis, and these are pictures of Brett Favre, of course. But Sis Nekima, is Wayfinder not only trying to get those resources back to those who need it, but also trying to get some punishment, some level of get some consequences against Brett Favre?
Yes. So our petition is calling out this issue to raise awareness. We are calling upon the Attorney General of Mississippi to bring charges against Brett Favre. We're also calling on President Biden and the Department of Justice to do their part to investigate this and to bring charges against Brett Favre. And part of this is making sure that this doesn't happen again. There should have been safeguards and safety nets and mechanisms in place to protect those resources for low-income families. Yep. And everybody went through the ringer during COVID-19. So those families needed those resources. And I also think about the fact that Black folks are prosecuted on the daily for so-called welfare fraud. And sometimes we're talking about, hundreds of dollars, thousands. We're talking about food stamps, just paper money, to go buy groceries. Black folks are prosecuted on a regular basis for those things. So how has Brett Favre been allowed to get away with this with millions of dollars at stake? He even raised questions in some of the text messages. Can the media find out about this? Trying to keep it on the down low. And so we're starting to see a slow trickle of interest in this case. More outlets are beginning to cover it, but he should have been in handcuffs by now. Because if he was Black, we know his mugshot would have been splashed everywhere. He would have been taken into custody. He would be facing multiple felonies for what Brett Favre has done. So that's what we want to see in this case. We want to see Mississippi step up, and we want to see President Joe Biden step up and hold Brett Favre and all who are responsible for this accountable.
And Sister Nekima, very quickly, how can people, sign on to this petition on change.org?
So if folks go to change.org and they use the search function, our petition says call to action, hold Brett Favre accountable. So we're asking people to sign on. There is also another petition by a different group that we encourage people to sign on to as well, that is focused on Brett Favre's Hall of Fame status being stripped away from him.
Wow.
I would urge people to go on and sign both petitions. And if there's other petitions that are seeking to hold Brett Favre accountable, to get involved. It takes a second to sign on as well as to share it with others in our network. And what I hope is that enough pressure will be built that Brett Favre will ultimately be held criminally liable for what he has done, which will signal to others, don't play with poor folks' money.
Nope.
I don't have time for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sister Nekima, I know that our time has been very well spent, and I really, really appreciate you. We got to bring you back on, sis, because we know that you're also working on the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. So we need to get an update about where we are with that situation. But I truly, truly appreciate you for coming on. And how can people get more information about your organization, Wayfinder Foundation?
So they can go to www.wayfinder.foundation. We are also, that's our web address. We are also on Instagram as well as Twitter and Facebook. And if they want to find me directly, they can find me on Instagram at Nekima L.
There it is right there. Sister Nekima Levy Armstrong, who is a civil rights attorney and executive director of Wayfinder Foundation. Sister Nekima, thank you for the great work. Thank you for your insight and your brilliance. And most importantly, thank you for being so good for the culture. God willing, we'll bring you back onto the show, and we'll have some more updates from you as you continue to do the great work on the front lines. Thank you, Sister Nekima. We truly appreciate you.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you and all the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anytime, I'm willing to come back. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, sis. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause as we move forward. Let's have a conversation about Black Lives Matter, as hip hop artist and fashion designer Kanye West has once again taken a swipe at the organization that has been calling for Black lives to be taken more seriously. Kanye West recently said that Black Lives Matter is a scam. We're going to be checking in with Dr. Melina Abdullah of Black Lives Matter Grassroots to give her response to what the hip hop star has to say. And then later we check in with Coach Butch McAdams to talk about Aaron Judge and his 62 homers and the impact that it's making on baseball history. Stay with us. Those discussions are up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. Always happy to have you join us as we have these conversations about topics and issues that are prevalent and relevant to our culture and our community. Make sure you continue to show your support for Black Star Network. You can go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, to show your support financially, as well as continue to share the content about the great work that we're doing as we raise up these conversations and have these discussions that affect us each and every day. So blackstarnetwork.com. Also, make sure that you follow me on my social media platforms. I'm at Farajii on Twitter and The Real Farajii on IG. Would love to connect with you. I'd love to continue to show my support for the work that you're doing individually, and we can stay in our community together. All right, I wanted to have a conversation about the it just seems like this is probably one of the crazy cultural moments, again, relating to hip hop artist and fashion designer Kanye West, as he had his major fashion show across the waters just a few days ago. And as part of the fashion show, he came out and put some very, very controversial views on some of his pieces. One of those pieces is a T-shirt that's read "White Lives Matter." Now, this took a whole different conversation, because not only was he wearing the shirt, but he actually had members of some of the models, including Lauryn Hill's daughter, to wear the shirt in the show. And Candace Owens, who was a conservative pundit, a conservative strategist, and a MAGA supporter, she wore the shirt, put it on her social media to show that he stood with her, and she was just happy about it. And it has caused many people to ask the question about whether Kanye West is really good for the culture. But more important than his personal brand, Kanye has said some crazy things over the years, to say the least. But then he took a swipe at the nonprofit organization Black Lives Matter, saying it is a scam, and that white lives matter. Wow. Well, we wanted to talk to the sister that is doing the work on the ground level, that understands the impacts of how superstars and celebrities the impact they make on what we see and how we see the world and how we see all of these different views. So we have our sister to join us again, Dr. Melina Abdullah, who serves as the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Grassroots here in Los Angeles, and also is doing the great work of continuing to teach us how to look at moments like this with the right perspective. Also, Sister Melina is a tenured professor and has been doing the work of talking about history and racism and addressing those issues in the classroom space as well. Sister Dr. Melina Abdullah, it's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me, Brother Farajii. This is a interesting one. This is a big, I lectured on this yesterday in my class. I teach an online class called Black Power, and we're reading Tarayan Hamilton's book, Black Power, and they talk about the different forms of racism. And I actually used this as an example of internalized racism and what that means and how harmful it is to Black liberation.
And you know what? I'm telling you, let me tell you why that's so deep, Sister Melina, because I literally was thinking, I was like, all right, I'm going to talk to Sister Melina today. In preparing for our conversation, I said, I'm going to talk to her, but I really want to pick her brain about this dynamic that we see. Like, I can write Kanye West off. I don't give him too much credence. You know what I mean? Because he said some things in the past, and yes, I've enjoyed him as an artist. But now it's like, bro, you're just getting disinvited from the cookout and the whole nine. But there is something that I think that needs to be talked about, which is when you have Black people who have lost themselves, and I'm seeing this more and more, and this is beyond politics and political affiliation. But I'm talking about there's this mindset, Sister Melina. There's a growing mindset in the Black community where the hatred runs so deep. It's like we are sabotaging, and for lack of a better word, we're sabotaging ourselves. And I'm trying to figure out, this is not necessarily a new thing, but I'm seeing it as a very prevalent thing that we're starting to see more and more Black people who are defending certain views, defending certain things happening in our community, right? Because we don't want to seem quote unquote racist. We don't want to go against another Black man because he's Black. And I'm like, but what about, there seems to be something missing there. And I'm trying to explain it the best way, but there's a dynamic here that we're seeing that is beyond just spouting white lives matter. There's something very, very fundamentally wrong.
Well, I want to lift up that first, when we think about that terminology that he used, the white lives, where does that come from, right? That it's not just about another slogan, but the folks who have been spewing white lives are organizations like the Ku Klux Klan that actually bring harm, that are there to bring violent retribution against Black people who dare to stand up and demand liberation. So it's not just he doesn't agree with a slogan or put out a problematic slogan. He's actually spewing rhetoric that incites violence against Black people. So I think it's really important that we recognize that it's not just about a disagreement about language. Second, I think that we always need to lift up, and you're pointing to this, that Black people, when we talk about white supremacy in this country, there have always been Black people who've been lured into benefits of white supremacy, who've been told that if you do this, if you serve as a surrogate for white supremacist violence and white supremacist oppression, you'll be rewarded. That's what I think we see with Candace Owens and Kanye West, is them reap reward from a system of white supremacy that promises not to harm them if they are willing to perpetuate harm on the rest of us. And so we have to, as Black people, say, listen, we're not going to give you a pass. There was a time, and I don't want to go too far into it, but there was a time, if we think about Kanye West of 2005, when he was saying George Bush doesn't care about Black people and speaking out against the ways in which Black people were mistreated and harmed and lost lives as a result of the response to Hurricane Katrina, that was a completely different Kanye West than the one that we're seeing now, or the one that we saw on Monday. And I think also about the harm that was brought, as you talk about the Black models who were forced to wear these shirts if they wanted to work that show. What does that mean to them? And how, again, does that perpetuate, going back to the book Black Power by Ray and Hamilton, they talk about Black people as living in a state of colonization, and some Black people used as tools for indirect rule for the colonizer to really perpetuate harm on their own people.
But it's something, and I know you study psychology. When you have powerful Black people, like I feel like there's just so much meshing between Black people, because you got Black people who are rich, right? Who promote a certain form of capitalism. You got Black people who are rich who say that this is reparations as a result of them being rich. You got Black people who are influential, who promote a certain, like a Kanye West, who says, look, I'm trying to use my creative license to bring awareness to a dichotomy that is against me. Like, it's so confusing I think to a lot of people. It's like, what are you trying to do? We're seeing Black people in so many new and different spaces. We're talking about Black millionaires and some billionaires. We're talking about Black people who are really shaping the context and the culture and education and entertainment. But their mindset is not, quote unquote, on Black liberation. The mindset is on, oh, let's get into the system and expand the system, or let's create the room, the seat at the table. And I'm wondering, my concern is, how do we not get confused about the direction that Black people should go as a result of all of these new voices and new perspectives being presented?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we try to get into the mind of Kanye, it will be confusing, because he doesn't have a mind that any of us should be following, right? But I think that the real solution is not that confusing. The real solution is, what does Black liberation look like? Who's doing the work for Black liberation? And then who's trying to stifle the work of Black liberation? So when you think about the white lives quote and the harm that's come with that, right? The violent attacks on not only Black organizers, but we need to think about why we needed to say Black Lives Matter in the first place, that Black people are under the constant attack of the state and are at the bottom of virtually every social, political, economic measure. If you talk about everything from housing to maternal health to education, Black people are at the bottom of these measures by the design of those systems. It's not hard for us to figure out that we have to struggle to undo harmful systems and to build new ones that are actually caring and actually nurture Black life. And so Black Lives Matter has been an organization that I'm very proud to be a part of for the last 9 years, to do work that empowers our people. And so for everyone who is not Kanye West or Candace Owens, and I would say they're selfishly looking for what some people would call a comfortable place in oppression. They're looking for the rewards of a fun. Everyone who is not them, it's not that confusing, right? That we need to do the work of Black liberation.
And the fact that Kanye has moved on to create a school, and the impact of that, he has already enrolled 100 students in this school that he started as a result of his philosophy. Can you talk to us about, like, you mentioned that White Lives Matter as a slogan is damaging and destructive. Now we're talking about him being responsible for or overseeing teaching children in a certain. Yes, ma'am.
As an educator, and one of my brothers and friends, Dr. Lawson Bush, talks about, he created this African Educators Pledge, right? Where we recognize the space that we occupy as educators as a sacred space. It's a sacred space. It's the equivalent of my pulpit. When I get to walk into my classroom, I pray up, I meditate with my students, and we engage in work where we develop what I call the intellectual tools for revolution, right? I would question any parent who would turn their child over to someone like a Kanye West who boasts that he doesn't read books. He boasts that he doesn't read books. Why would you entrust him with the education of your children? And so he has no business in education. He really, there's a lot that he does that he has no business doing. And this is not to say that he's not a talented creative, but he is not an educator. And I pray that, the spirit of his mother, who was an educator, visits him and corrects the course.
Wow. As a result, what has been the response that BLM has received that you might have seen on your end with BLM grassroots or just in the national, in some of the national office? Has there been any type of pushback? Has there been any type of action that's been done in response to what Kanye has put out there? Has there been more money coming in for the organization, more support and resources? What has been the response over the past 48 hours?
Right. So a lot of people want to know what we have to say. But it's also, and so, that's great. We want to make sure that we put out statements where we talk about, the reason we didn't think we'd have to re-educate people, but the reason we don't say white lives is because white people have never been targeted by the system Black people have. It's also encouraging, though, to see entertainers and influencers like Jamie Foxx, like Amanda Seales, like Van Lathan, speaking up so beautifully and powerfully. And I think that one of the reasons that they're able to speak in ways that are really thoughtful is these are people who are also aligned with movement, right? So Jamie Foxx does work with Trayvon Martin's family, right? Amanda Seales is connected with movement. Van Lathan is constantly in conversation with Black Lives Matter organizers and knows what's happening on the ground. And so they've been able to speak up powerfully. And then I think one of the most encouraging conversations that I've had, and I just had it today, was with one of the writers on for 808s and Heartbreak, who is donating her portion of the sales to Black Lives Matter as a direct response to Kanye West, and saying, you know what, I don't stand with him, I stand with Black Lives Matter. So she's directly donating her portion of the publishing rights to Black Lives Matter Los Angeles.
This is, I'm happy to hear that. I'm certainly happy to hear that. Let me just share with you, Sister Melina, with folks on our online community culture crew is talking about. Real Brooklyn, you checked in, you said, can't get mad at someone who already showed who they are when Black consciousness is a subject, and they lay an egg every time. In other words, Kanye is the one brother putting raisins in potato salad.
That was good. Yes. Agreed.
I thought you would like that one, Doc. Truth is Power, you said, and he had a nerve to make a song called When It All Falls Down. Yep. Janae, you said, Truth is Power, thank you. Janae, you said, what's crazy is that Candace Owens wouldn't marry a Kanye West, and neither would he marry her. But these two clowns would rather oppress others, the stupidity. And please stop being nice to Kanye West. Don't save him. I don't want to save him. We have these conversations like, and I said it jokingly, like, oh, he's not invited to the cookout. But I'm starting to, and let me tell you, I know Black folks that still stand with Kanye in his madness and his foolishness. And part of me, maybe it's just me, Sister Melina, but I'm starting to look at those folks a little crazy, like, yo, y'all really still riding with this guy? Like, what will have to happen in order for Black folks to say enough is enough? Now, it's one thing culturally to say, oh, we take somebody's Black card, but it's another thing when we take some real action against somebody, whether it's boycotting their music, boycotting their fashion, saying, look, we're not going to support you. Hell, and I know this is a sensitive topic, but we still have huge debates about R. Kelly. We're having debates about Tiffany Haddish and Ari Spears. Like, there seems to be this like pro this, anti that when it comes to certain moments like this, right? And I'm just saying, like, damn, we can't be on the same page about something as blatant as what we're seeing right now. And that's the concerning part. That's what concerns me the most, Dr. Molina.
Yeah, I think that she may also be responding to, I did invite them to my class. I said, you know, Kanye West and Candace Owens, if you don't understand race, racism, and why we say Black Lives Matter, come to my class. It's free, it's online, and you're welcome to come so you can understand. And there are some folks who said that that was too soft of an approach. But what I really want to do is dispel this idea that they're ignorant. I think that they're willfully ignorant, right? That they are choosing to espouse ignorance, and not just ignorance, harm. And I wanted to expose the willfulness of that. I think Van Lathan is one who said, you know, it's either ignorance or evil. Well, if they're not willing to educate themselves, it shows which one of those things it is. And again, I don't want to understate the harm of what it is they're saying and espousing and wearing on these shirts. That, you know, when you say white lives, you empower violent white supremacists to really bring physical harm against organizers, and you enable a pushback against those whose loved ones have been stolen by police violence.
Sure. Speaking of which, I want to share with folks, and I'm sure you've already seen it because you do the work of building with these families. I wanted to talk about the statement that came from Ahmaud Arbery's mom, Miss Wanda. And let me just pull this up. Keenan and Ariel, if we can post that. This is the statement that Miss Wanda Cooper Jones, who is the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed by those white men down in Georgia. This is what she said in a statement given through her attorney, Lee Merritt. Miss Wanda Cooper Jones, the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, expressed her, quote, extreme disappointment in Kanye West for slapping the phrase White Lives Matter on clothing from his latest Yeezy collection and doubling down on his stance on Tuesday. She said as a result of his display, White Lives Matter started trending in the U.S., which would direct support and legitimize extremist behavior, much like the behavior that took the life of her son. Now, Ms. Cooper Jones relayed through her attorney. That is the thing that Wanda and family like hers continue to fight against. So if we got a black man empowering white extremism, it seems like there's you know, how do you prepare for a war? Because now it's not just about the white extremists. Now you got to figure out who in your community might be in a cahoots with them.
Right. Well, I don't think anybody was questioning whether or not Kanye was on our side. I think anybody who's followed him for the last couple of years and saw him in MAGA hats and cuddled up with Donald Trump and running around with other folks like Candace Owens, I think we knew he wasn't on the side of the masses of Black people. So I don't think that that's anything new. But we do have to start to question Black folks. There is a such thing, again, as Black faces on white supremacy. And Kanye West is, I think, willfully choosing to be a Black face on white supremacy.
Damn. Like he said, when it all falls down, damn.
Right.
That's the place. And you know, Bob, you doing your work on the grassroots level in Los Angeles. Do you think that this will force Black Hollywood, quote unquote, to get into a clearer understanding of making a stand, not just on this thing, but just in terms of social justice and civil rights issues that are affecting our people? Will this force Black actors, other Black actors who are not part of the movement, to get involved?
Well, I certainly hope so, right? And we have a lot of Black folks who have been involved. So I think what it could do is remind them that Black Lives Matter is not here for a moment. We are what is required of our lives as Black people, right? Doing work to bring Black liberation. That struggle never ends until we get free. And we're nowhere near freedom. We're further down the road than we were, but we're nowhere near freedom. And so I think our ancestors our children and future generations require of us that we constantly struggle, that in Angela Davis's words, that we remember that freedom is a constant struggle. And so I hope that other entertainers, artists, influencers will counter what Kanye feels like he needs to say, is paid to say. We know that, you know, he's not short on money. So
no.
I think that he's absolutely enriching himself over this controversy, or by engaging in such controversy, and by engaging again in white supremacy, by being willing to serve as a blackface on white supremacy.
I would totally agree, and I would like for him to be shunned by other members of the hip hop community. Those who are conscious members of the community should say, you know what, we can't work with you no more. Like, there has to be a line drawn, Sister Melina. You know, and that's just not for Kanye West. I'm just talking about in general. We have to say enough is enough. If you got Black people that are part of our community who espouse one thing, they do something else, and they try to all cloak it under the term of, oh, creative license, you know, I'm trying to disrupt the system. But ultimately, it leads to the degradation of our struggle and of our pain, to humiliation of the tons of the families that have been affected as a result of white lives mattering. I think we need to make some hard lines and say, you know what, we don't support you. We don't support you, because I'm personally tired of seeing this level of support for Black artists, Black creatives, Black influencers, Black business people, when they show that they don't deserve it.
That's right. I think that we can't tolerate, this is, you know, it's like when there's an abuser in the family, right? Just because they're your family members doesn't mean that you tolerate the abuse. You have to out the abuse. You have to shun the abuse. You have to say abuse won't be tolerated in this family. And you have to wrap your arms around those who are harmed and see what's necessary to bring healing. So we can't coddle Kanye West just because he happens to be born into the same family. He is abusive to Black people.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to let that be the final word, Doc. I'm going to let that be the final word. Dr. Melina Abdullah, who is a professor, a tenured professor. She's also the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Grassroots, doing fantastic work in the city of Los Angeles and across the country. Dr. Melina, it's always a pleasure and a privilege to have you on the show to share your thoughts. And thank you for your response to this controversy. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, final conversation. Let's check in with Coach Butch McAdams about the historic 62 homers that was hit by Mr. Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. We'll talk about the impact of this on baseball history with It's the Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Gerald Horn at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, Dave.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been having a day of dynamic discussions talking about a variety of issues, and I could not let the day go forward without us having a conversation about sports. And every so often when we have a chance to talk about sports, we're talking about the big cultural moments, historic moments that we see. And so I'm so happy to have our big brother, Coach Butch McAdams, joining us for this part of the discussion around Aaron Judge, the New York Yankees player who has already hit a historic 62 home runs, beating out the record that was set by Roger Maris back in 1961. And Aaron Judge is a Black man. He's his parents. He comes from a biracial family. He was adopted by white parents who took good care of him, and now he is in the in history books as having more home runs in a single season than Roger Maris. Let's bring in Coach Butch McAdams as we have this part of the conversation. Coach, thank you as always for being a part of the conversation, sir. What's your take? What's your take of Aaron Judge right now? 62 homers, beat out Roger Maris, who beat out Babe Ruth. Is this something that Black folks should be truly excited about?
Well, I think this is something that Black folks should be truly excited about. And I think this is something that all the baseball fans should be truly excited about. Now, I'm not that old where I saw Babe Ruth hit the 60, but I was a very young baseball fan back in 1961 when Roger Maris hit the 61. And so you're talking about 1961 to 2022. And not only has Aaron Judge had a great year from the home run perspective, but he's only a few points, batting points, from winning the Triple Crown.
I saw that.
Yeah, so you're talking about a guy that has 62 home runs, over 100 RBI, and is batting over 300. That is a season, man.
He's going all the way. So 62 home runs. Now this is, like I said, he is and I read this, like his stature, Coach, 6'7", 282 pounds. This is a big guy.
He is a big guy, right? He's a big guy, and he is an all-around athlete. if you read his bio, he played multiple sports in high school. And once again, this guy, you could see it coming now. No one could see 62, but we knew that if he stayed healthy throughout most of the season, he had an opportunity to at least get 50. And he, as I said, the 62 is record breaking, but 62 along with a 300 plus batting average and well over 100 RBI, that's a season, man. Now keep in mind, he's a free agent, and hey, he's going to break the bank. He's going to get, in my opinion, a $500 million contract.
Golly. And they said that he may, I saw a couple of reports saying that he may actually be a good fit for the Mets. Do you see him at staying with the Yankees, or he's going to move on?
No way in the world, unless he has a personal gripe against the Yankees. There's no way in the world that the Yankees are going to let this guy walk, and especially walk across town. No way. You know
rather
what?
see him in another state than walk across
Man,
town.
listen, there's no way, unless he just clearly says, look, I don't want to be a Yankee anymore. And I don't see that. I don't see that. But there's no way that I see the Yankees. George Steinbrenner would get out of his grave, man, and prevent that from letting his sons. But that's not going to happen. No. The New York Yankees.
I got you. So, Coach, give me your take on, as part of this story, is the fact that the other part of it, outside of the season he's having in terms of the numbers you highlighted, but there's a lot of talk about this being the post-steroid era, that he's gotten 62 homers after the post-steroid era. That when we saw with like Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, I remember living in Chicago when Sammy Sosa was on that run to being a home run legend. But that was during the time that we knew a number of players were taking these steroids. Is this the right way to put the accomplishments of Aaron Judge, that can we accurately say that this is a post-steroid era?
Yes, I think we can. And what I would do, okay, first of all, let me say that Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. Okay. Yeah. And the reason why I say he should, because Barry didn't juice his whole career. I figure out that he juiced maybe 2 years or 3 at the most. And when he saw McGwire and Sosa, he said, wait a minute, I'm better hitters than both of these guys. And so he did what he had to do. And those normal warning track balls were, hit out in the Bay in San Francisco. But years before, this guy was a 3-4 tool player. He could hit for power. He was normally around 40 home runs, something like that. Not much more than that. He could hit for average. He could run, and he could throw. He could field. So he should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, in the record books, it should be an asterisk. It should be an asterisk. Hey, not taking out the record books, but an asterisk saying, hey, accomplishment during the steroid era. Because it wasn't like it was only 2 or 3 players, in my opinion, on steroids. I think you had a large percentage of players, including pitchers. So it was the steroid era.
And now that we're out of that place, and now we're looking at the future of baseball, because some people have even gone as far as to say that baseball is losing its attention that we see other sports like football has gotten. Do you I mean, and you're a basketball coach, but I know that your first love in sports was always been baseball. Do you see the sentiment around baseball changing in America, and how does that feel to have a black man kind of leading the charge in that way?
Well, years ago, baseball was number 1, boxing was number 2, and horse racing was number 3 in terms of the pecking order of professional sports. Now, overall, baseball is not near the NFL. The NFL is at a level by itself, but it depends on the city. Now, if you go to Los Angeles, that's a Dodger town. Now, they love the Lakers and all, but that's a Dodger town. Make no mistake about it. New York City, LA is a Dodger town. New York City is a Yankees town. St. Louis is such a huge baseball town that they don't have football, NFL, and they don't have NBA. So in certain cities, baseball is still king, but across the nation, no. But I love it because it's to me, it's the fairest game. It's the closest thing, a microcosm of life. In football, you got a clock. In basketball, you got a clock. There's no clock in baseball. You got to get the job done. You got to get them 27 outs.
I like how you put that, Coach.
Yeah, and everything. But what I don't like is baseball now tampering a little bit with the rules. Baseball is fine. Baseball is fine. And I always equate baseball like watching a serial. Okay. You just can't sit down and watch, as the old folks used to call them, the stories. Okay. You can't just watch Days of Our Lives or The Young and the Restless and know what's going on. You got to follow it. Baseball's the same way. See, football, you can sit down and you can see somebody running or somebody get hit, and that's self-explanatory. But in baseball, you got to know the players, you got to know the situations, and I love it because it is the hardest thing to do, in my opinion, in all of sport, is to hit a baseball. And what's equally difficult for a pitcher is to get a professional hitter out. You can be a tremendous athlete. Look at some of the great athletes who tried to play baseball and weren't that successful. Michael Jordan, Deion Sanders.
Bo Jackson.
Baseball is something that you cannot get a late start in because it is so skilled. It's just so skilled of a sport where you have to start young, okay? And there's a skill set to hitting a baseball. There's a skill set for pitching. I love the strategy of baseball. I mean, some people say it's boring, but if your team is in the playoffs, for example, my team, the Washington Nationals, 3 years ago, went through the playoffs and they won the World Series. I sat down on just about all of those games and watched every pitch because every pitch was important. Every inning was important. But it's a sport that you have to know the players. You have to know the players.
Let me tell you, this home run feat that Aaron Judge was able to pull off just on yesterday has been talk of the baseball world, so much so that Roger Maris's son, Roger Maris Jr., had put out a message saying, quote, "Congratulations to Aaron Judge and his family on Aaron's historic home run, number 62. It has definitely been a baseball season to remember. You are all class and someone who should be revered. For the majority of the fans," he put majority in all caps, "we can now celebrate a new clean home run king." Wow.
I think, yeah, I think that's a fair statement. It's a fair statement. But a statement, and I don't know whether I've ever shared this with you before, but that what statement that really gets me riled up when I would hear some younger people say, well, coach, baseball is a white man's game. It's a white sport. Have you ever heard that?
I have heard that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I get so angry when I hear it. And I say, how dare you say that? That is so disrespectful to a Satchel Paige or Cool Papa Bell or Josh Gibson, Jackie Robinson. And then when the black ball players had a chance to come up in the natural progression, like 20, 21, 22, the Willie Mays, the Frank Robinson, the Hank Aarons of the world. And if you do your homework, you'll see the greatest players of all time have been African American.
Yep.
Nobody has ever played the game better than Willie Mays. Nobody. Okay? In terms of pitching, a right-hand pitcher, Bob Gibson. Anytime you are so good that the sport has to adjust its rules, you're dominant. Bob Gibson was in 1968, Bob Gibson was so unhittable that they had to change the rules. They lowered the mound.
Damn.
And all of these are black players. And even today, as you stated, we still have great black players.
Yep.
Now, what you don't see a lot of are dominant black pitchers anymore. They're few, but not a lot. But man, and I'm telling you, Judge is going to break the bank, and well deserved. And I don't think you've heard the last of this guy.
No, I don't think so either. I definitely don't think so either.
If he stays relatively healthy, because he's just coming into his prime. He's just coming in. Let me say this about Roger Maris. Roger Maris came out of nowhere. Okay. The Yankees traded for Maris from Kansas City in 1960. And he had a really good year, 1960. Yankees lost the World Series 7 games to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And that was rare because Yankees didn't lose too much back then. But 1961, that team, now he had 61 home runs. Mickey Mantle had 50, I think he had 55 home runs because they were neck and neck. Can you imagine, like when you had Sosa and McGuire? That was during your time. But can you imagine a home run derby with teammates, not just teammates, batting behind each other?
Dang.
And yeah, Mickey finished with about 54, 55 that year. Roger had 61. And on the Yankees roster, I think they had at least 6 or 7 or more players that had 20 or more home runs.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That says a lot about the organization.
Well, the organization, man, it's the Yankees. They for so many years were dominant. Then they hit on from 1964 to about 1977. They hit on a really low period. Steinbrenner comes in, he buys the team, and he builds it back up. But then they bring in another star, Reggie Jackson.
Yep.
And Reggie keeps the brand going. Okay.
Yep.
And then after that, they build it up where they don't have the big slugger, but they have so many great players. And then The dominant star during that era was Derek Jeter, number 2, the captain.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah, Derek Jeter. Now, speaking of that, now here's a little known fact that I think your viewers would enjoy. Do you know that the public announcer address at Yankee Stadium, you know, the guy that says now batting and now pitching, is a brother?
No, I didn't know that.
He's an African American.
Wow.
He's an African American, yes, absolutely. But
I did
no,
not know
baseball,
that.
yeah. And it's, if you're a baseball fan, it's nothing like, and I experienced this for a few years here in Washington. But unlike football, where you got to wait 5 or 6, 7 days, you got a good baseball team, man. Just think of it. Just about every night you can turn the game on,
right,
and see a good sporting event. It's nothing like it, man. It's nothing like it, and it's nothing as worse as what the Oriole fans went through for years, and now what we here in Washington are going through, to have a team rebuilding. Oh, I hate that. I hate that. You know, they're going to rebuild and put a minor league product on the field, but the prices are still the same.
Right.
You know, if I want to see AAA, then I'll go to see AAA.
I know you don't. I definitely understand. Hey, Coach, you know what? You know why I truly appreciate you, because you, and this is why I invited you on, because one is that you can give us some context and history to this big and historic moment, which is not just about the stats. It's also about the legacy that Aaron Judge is kind of walking into as it relates to other black ball players and the legacy that he's walking into with baseball in general. So, you know, it's truly appreciated. All right, we got like 30 seconds, and I'm gonna hit you with something that you probably, I wasn't thinking about this, but I was like, I got you on the line. The NFL season is moving further along. I gotta ask you about my guy, Lamar Jackson. What you think, Coach?
Lamar Jackson is a tremendous athlete. He's a very good quarterback. I think Lamar should have taken the last contract offer that the Ravens,
that 250, 133 guaranteed.
Absolutely. That's fair. That's fair, because what he's looking at, and if anyone else along with him, they're foolish. Nobody, and I shouldn't say anyone, but the chances of somebody other than the Cleveland Browns given that much guaranteed money is not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I felt because if you look at it, 250, 133, that's very much comparable to Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it was a little bit more than Russell Wilson and Kyle Murray.
So what is he at right now? Right now, objectively, I would say Lamar is probably 5th or 6th best quarterback in the league.
Gotcha.
Okay, and now, because again, and I tell the Ravens fans, very electrifying, very exciting player, but 1-3 in the playoffs. And he's got to improve on that. And I think he will. But he definitely should have taken that contract. He definitely should have. And Harbaugh, very good coach, top 5 coach. But boy, he has a tendency to make some horrible decisions in a game.
You think he needs to be fired?
Absolutely not. Who are you going to replace him with? You know, unless you can guarantee getting Sean Payton out of the booth, out of the television studio, and then maybe, yeah. But anything short of that, who are you going to replace him with is better? Every year the Ravens know they're going to be in contention.
Yeah. Yep. And every year, Coach, the Ravens will give you a heart attack when watching them every year.
Well, you know
Hands
what?
down.
It's better than watching what I have to watch. But you know
Out of
what?
Washington, D.C.?
I only watch them from a professional perspective because of what I do.
Right.
But as I said, if them suckers played in my backyard, I'll pull the blinds on.
I'm going to leave it right there, Coach. Coach Butch McAdams, radio host, former triple championship basketball coach, man, out of Washington, D.C., one of our great contributors here on The Culture, sports contributors and sports historians here on The Culture. We truly, truly appreciate you, Coach, and we will certainly bring you back on very, very soon. But thank you, Coach, for checking in to talk about the history-making moment of Aaron Judge and 62 homers. We truly appreciate you. All right, folks, that is going to do it for us. I hope you enjoyed the show just as much as we enjoyed presenting these conversations to you. Man, oh man, big shout out to all of my dynamic guests today, who have checked in: Dr. Melina Abdullah, Sister Nekima Armstrong, Dr. Gerald Horn, and Coach Butch McAdams. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to my online culture crew for being a part of the conversations. Man, oh man, I truly enjoy having these discussions with you. And my hope and prayer is that they edify you, that you go further in your consciousness by hearing and listening to what our guests have to say. Make sure you continue to support us. This is why we do what we do. Make sure you continue to support us here at Black Star Network. Go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Support us right there through all of the various platforms by which you can support us. Share the content, like us on our social media page, befriend us on our social media page. We're on IG, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Definitely check us out there. But again, this is Black media at its finest. We're putting out programs, we're having these discussions, we're showing you the people that are making the difference in our culture. And so we need to keep the momentum going. Also, make sure y'all hit me up on my social media. You can find me on Instagram at The Real Farajii. Also, you can find me on Twitter at Farajii, Farajii. I'm always looking for folks to connect with, always looking to put out some new messages, and I will certainly follow you back. As long as you got something to say and you're doing some excellent work. Big shout out to my online culture crew, man, because some of you have been checking in. Janelle, I see you. Lana, thank you so much. Janae, thank you so much. Y'all put me on the things that I don't always, that sometimes I miss. And sometimes when you got all these things happening in our country and around the world, your eyes can't be everywhere. So for you, for y'all bringing information to me, Brother Damon, again, thank you. For y'all bringing information to me about things that I have not seen or stories that I have not heard about, it is absolutely powerful. And that's the beauty of what we're creating here with this community called the Culture Crew, because you are a part of a community. You empower me, I empower you, and we can raise our consciousness together. So I appreciate each and every one of you for connecting and building with me. All right, that's going to do it for me today, but we'll certainly have some members of the Culture Crew joining us tomorrow. But at the 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, y'all can check out my big brother, Brother Roland Martin, for Roland Martin Unfiltered. Make sure y'all tune in for that. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. Big shout out to my team, Joel and Shannon. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, King Keenan. And my control room, thank you so much for making the broadcast tight and what it is today. But make sure y'all stay tuned for Brother Roland Martin in a few right here on the Black Star Network. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow. And other than that, see you soon. Peace.